Hello, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to sit down. This is the second ever Neuromuscular Support Group for Young Adults meeting. The first meeting was 2 years ago, and it was not such a good turnout, so this is really nice. It was basically me just talking in front of my close family and friends, crying and speaking inaudibly about how upset I was about my disease. So this is going to be much better, maybe. I have to thank some people first. So Adrian, this is Adrian, my genetic counsellor. Adrian is the person who suggested that all this should happen. So she's amazing, and it's happened. I have to thank the ladies from the Genetic Support Network of Victoria. So Louisa, who's in Italy at the moment, Nancy, who's not here, but I email her every day and I'm really annoying. And of course, Anna back there. I just learned that Anna is leaving to become a genetic counsellor of her own, which is really lovely. So thank you so much for everything, Anna, and for coming. You didn't have to be here. You could be at home on Netflix, but you're here. I'd like to thank my friends and family, particularly my mum. I had to wait for her to get here because she's important. My girls, shout out, because you've been here since the get-go, all of you. And also to JB, who never makes me feel inadequate about having to say, oh, I didn't want to get upset. Anyway, Professor Ingrid is here. She's going to give a medical perspective or a clinical perspective on neuromuscular conditions. Carney's here from Queensland, which is really nice. She's a former Paralympic swimmer. And Finn and Emma are also here to talk about their personal experiences. And I'm crying again. It doesn't get any easier to talk about. So this is, yeah. I'm just going to give a really super quick summary of why we're here. I was going to do this at the end, but I'll just quickly get it over and done with now because I'm crying. In December of 2012, I was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, and I was feeling really isolated, and I wanted to search for support to, just sort of talk to other people about what was going on. And mostly I did this online and found that there was really only support aimed at really young children who have spinal muscular atrophy, and that means that the support was mostly for their parents and also the elderly, so there was this huge gap, and I thought it was ridiculous. So after, in early 2014, when I was seeing Adrian, she asked if she could use my phone number as a point of contact for some young people who she counselled and was in contact with, and this is how I met Finn. So I met Finn, and it was so crazy being able to relate to someone on a personal level. Since my diagnosis, it was crazy. You make me cry so much. I love you so much, but it's hard. So, I don't want to talk about this part, but it's sad. So anyway, I met Finn, and it was amazing. That's all I have to say. And then I met Emma during our first meeting at the Children's Hospital. So I sort of decided that I was going to establish this support group with the help of the ladies from the Genetic Support Network of Victoria, and of course with Adrian's assistance. So we started this support group. Back then it was just like a website. There was zero website traffic. I don't think anyone knew it existed. We had a really crappy logo. It was weird. It was like a children's logo. So it was just really shit. So then together with the girls' help, we sort of took it to the next level and asked people to, contact. We put my mobile number up there and said, if you have a neuromuscular condition, call this chick. She will talk to you. And I'm a pretty good listener, I think. And I like to talk, obviously. Then we had this meeting at the Children's Hospital where as I explained earlier, I just cried my eyes out as I'm doing right now, but it was much worse, if you can believe it. And Emma was there. So I met Emma, And I'm like, who is this chick? She's like around our age, and like, you know, she also sort of has similar stuff to us. And it was just really bizarre that we hadn't been able to manage to get in contact prior to this. So yeah, we actually caught up recently, the three of us at my house, and we discussed you know, the issues that we share as young adults, which is like, you know, we talked about like dating, going out socially, being mistaken for being like blind drunk when we're actually dead sober because of how we move and because we're slow, me falling downstairs all the time, getting kicked out of places and trying to explain that I'm not hammered. Sometimes I am. Yeah, so it's hard. It's really hard to figure out what you want to do, who you are, who you want to be, the differences you want to make in the world. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I'm doing it, and I'm doing it with their help and everyone else's help. So, yeah, we can't do a lot physically for each other, but we'll grow old together and drink whiskey in an old age home. But we'll be like 30. So, thank you. That's it.
So I'm just introducing Professor Ingrid Winship, but before I do that, I want to say a really big thank you to Hannah for organising the meeting and for making a real difference to people through running this group. So thank you, Hannah, you're just brilliant. You've done brilliant. We're lucky to have Ingrid Winship here today. She's a professor at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, and she's chair of adult clinical genetics at the University of Melbourne, and she's also the Executive Director of Research at Melbourne Health. She's got a lot of clinical and research interests, particularly in adult onset conditions, where the importance of knowing the genotype can make a big difference to people's diagnosis and what lifestyle changes and sometimes treatments can be done to help those people. She has experience in gene discovery and in the translation of those discoveries into clinical practice. And she's also interested in the societal implications of the research with the ethical and legal and cultural and psychosocial sides of the genetic technology. So Ingrid is a member of the Victorian Cancer Agency, the board of the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute, the Peter Doherty, and many other boards, and she's also on the Australian Health Ethics Committee. So thanks a lot, Ingrid, for coming today.
Thank you very much, Adi and Hannah, for inviting me. So I really would just like to commend Hannah and Adi and everybody who's really got this group together. And I think identifying the gap is halfway to fixing the problem. Finding that there's not much of a support group for particularly young adults, but also young adults sadly get to be middle-aged and sometimes old adults. And about the whiskey, I always said I wouldn't drink whiskey until I grew up. So I haven't started drinking whiskey yet because I'm putting off growing up. But some people think I might be deluded. So maybe I should just go home and drink whiskey. So I came to Melbourne in 2004 because there really was no service. I was asked to come and work around the area of adult onset genetic disorder and also cancer genetics, which was kind of a little bit haphazard at the time. But I always wanted to pitch my efforts at things that affected adults, because the genetics community has kind of moved in a pediatric direction, and I'm not saying they shouldn't. I think looking after kids is really important. But you're an adult for 4 times as long as you're a child. So why would we only, I mean, obviously you have to look after children nicely so they become adults. And in the olden days, with bad infant mortality and things like that wasn't the issue. But we really do need to look after adults better. So in 2006, just before Christmas 2006, I started working at the Royal Melbourne Hospital to set up a genetic service for adult patients. because pediatrics was well served, and some of you may have had experiences through the VCGS, which is now effectively a pediatric service, but really adults were not being well served. So we decided, everybody said you're crazy, but that's okay because maybe I am. But I'd come from New Zealand where I'd set up a genetic service from absolutely nothing. There was no genetic service. And so what I did was I started out by going around and doing a needs assessment, not saying, oh, this is a clinic I'd like to do or whatever. What do people need? What sort of conditions are being seen in clinics, and what questions are the doctors asking? What questions are people asking about their own health? So we modelled this service along the same lines of saying, well, who are the people who need our services? And very quickly, neurogenetics emerged as one of the key areas. So we put our toe into the proverbial pond and started with 2 neurologists who would come, I think it was once every second month or something like that, and then every month. And now they come every fortnight, and I think we could probably increase the clinics to every week because there is a demand. There are people who are 20 and 25 and 30 and older who don't have a diagnosis. There are people who are asking questions, and if you don't know what your diagnosis is, how do you know what the future holds for you? I'm not one for putting a label, and I would never define somebody by a genetic problem. So the mutation that causes a genetic problem is one of your 22,000 active coding genes. It doesn't define you, but it certainly has an impact on your quality of life. And so it's working that holistic model of health, but understanding the impact for yourself, for the rest of your family, for your kids. So much of what happens is focused in children around the parents and around the children, that people sometimes forget that kids actually grow up to be adults, and adults have adult needs, particularly young adults who need to drink whiskey and sometimes get hammered. And, it's age-appropriate behaviour. You wouldn't want to grow up a complete nerd. And your mother's listening.
We know.
Yeah, well, she looks incredibly young to be your mother, so follow the family trend. But the most important thing is actually knowing what you're dealing with, because when you know something, even though it may be knowledge that you didn't want to know, and it may be knowledge that you don't really like, it's easier to deal with things. Risks and issues are there whether you understand them or not. And so if there are opportunities to have interventions, then obviously the more you know about what's going on with your genes and your muscles and your nerves and your whole physiology and your whole self, makes it easier. So one of the things that I'm trying to do through the Royal Melbourne, and this is not just in genetics but across the board, is try and use the genomic basis for clinical trials. So this is a very new area. So if there are, and it fits into the whole sort of area of precision medicine. So we're not all the same. We're all roughly the same. Our genomes are virtually indistinguishable, and we're also quite closely related to monkeys and earthworms. But you look around the room, and we are all quite different. So why would the same approach work for everybody? So this phenomenon of precision medicine has been brought in, and this is using your genetic knowledge and then the knowledge about everything else about you and trying to customize treatment. We also are very keen on the idea of early intervention. So the earlier, if there is a treatment, the earlier you can intervene, the less damage there is to muscles or nerves or whatever, the more hope there is to restore function for as long as possible. And we do this across the board, whether it's kidney disease or neuromuscular disease or cardiac disease, trying to understand what's going on in the biology of the problem so that we can get a biological response, but never focusing only on the biology, because a lot of your management, a lot of your needs are met by people other than doctors. The other really key thing, and Adi is a perfect example, she's one of the best genetic counsellors I've ever worked with. We're very spoilt because, and Em's at the back and sitting quietly, but she's a a newer version of the same. But in fact, sometimes I forget she's a trainee because she's so good that I think she's fully qualified. But we have, I think, 9 or 10 genetic counsellors in our team, and they are really, really important. But we're a multidisciplinary team, so we have neurologists, we have neuropsychiatrists, we have counsellors, there are social workers, there are physiotherapists, occupational therapists. The world is not made exactly the same for everybody. And in as much as some people have different abilities than others, having somebody like an occupational therapist come and fit out your workstation, your home, whatever, making it ready for you rather than trying to make you ready for it. So the whole multidisciplinary team is the way that we're going. And I think over the next 20 years, there'll be a shift of the balance from clinical care from being just about doctors to about teams of people who work together. We are in a position to offer genetic testing to people who come to our service. So if there are undiagnosed problems, then sometimes we can't find a diagnosis. And I think you might hear more about that later. And that's because we've only been doing genetic testing for about 20 years. I've been doing genetics since 1983. And I think there were like 2 tests we could do. We could look at whole chromosomes, and then the odd test came in, and then we found a gene here and there, and then there was the Human Genome Project. And now there's, all these international consortia to try and understand. And we're still at the bottom of a very steep learning curve. So I think anybody who said that we had any idea, about nailing the whole genetic question would be as deluded as I am about still being young. But we've got energy, we've got resources, there's amazing science that's going into all of this. So using all of that, using the holistic approach, but taking as much science as we can to guide us in looking after people is the way we want to go. So I don't know whether you want questions, or I can't really answer any questions because I don't know much. But AD knows more about neurology than me. I'm just generic.
That's good. Thank you very much.
I'm really sorry, but I do have to go somewhere else. I said to Cardi, I'm not actually leaving in Inman. Finn. Oh, how could I forget Finn? We have a Finn in our team who we love dearly. He's a genuinely older doctor, and we just had a little celebration for him today because he got Australia Day honours. So we've all been in Finn mode today. So obviously Finn is a name that goes with a bit of panache. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Your turn.
All right.
This is Carney, everyone. She's come all the way from Queensland to come and hang out with us. So I'm unable to be diagnosed. So they told me, I was told that I had spinal muscular atrophy, but when I had genetic testing done, it showed that I didn't actually have the gene related to spinal muscular atrophy. And Carney actually is in the same boat, so that's really cool. Yeah, well, it's sort of cool.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's only the 2 of us, so we should probably stick together. Yeah. So yeah, she's gonna speak now.
I feel a bit formal doing slides. But
Yeah. Do you want me to?
Well, I'll just do them and then we'll see what happens.
Okay. I'm just gonna see if I can move
I
this
think
out
you're
of
gonna put
the
the projector back on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hi everyone, I am Carney and I have just come down from sunny Queensland.
Are you happy for me to?
I can do them.
Okay.
I'm all good. I am a keynote speaker, so that's why I have a presentation. I haven't had no time today to even think about what I was going to say today because I thought it was going to be casual. I'll be amongst friends because I'm guessing there's a few of in the room that also have a neuromuscular disease. What have we got here? We've got parents, family members. Yeah?
I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm amongst friends, right? So I thought it was going to be casual. If you want to ask me any questions at the end, feel free. But because I am a keynote speaker and a radio presenter, I do tend to go off kilter. That's why I'm going to try and stick to this thing here, the slides. But what I normally talk about with my corporates and kids and government employees and stuff is usually about stuff that we can't control. So I thought it did kind of relate to us anyway, because none of us had any control over the fact that, you know, we did get diagnosed with this disease, or you have a family member that was diagnosed with this disease. My story is a little bit different, or a lot different to Hannah's, in the fact that I was actually born with this condition, and I was diagnosed at 12 months age. When I say diagnosed, I will get to that, you know, the diagnosis thing later, but I was actually diagnosed in 1979 via a muscle biopsy to have spinal muscular atrophy. And in fact, back then, there was no types. So it was just a blanket diagnosis, and you can probably imagine without Google and without any specialist really in this condition, it feels like there's none now. You can just imagine 36 years ago, there was definitely none. And I'm actually from a place called Rockhampton originally. Have you guys all heard of the beef capital of Australia? Yeah? So you know how you can't control certain carbs? I also couldn't control where I was born. So I was born in Rockhampton, and like all parents, and I've done a TED talk about this, so I'm not going to go on about it today, but all parents, and I'm surrounded by my friends now having babies. So whenever you ask a mother or father to be, what do you want to have, a boy or a girl? What's the universally accepted response? I don't care, right? As long as the baby is healthy. That's all I care about. I mean, that's pretty silly. I only want a girl. And I don't care if it's got a disability. But in terms of the fact that my mother was only around, you know, her friends, there was no Google, there was no real conversations about disability. And all of a sudden, she had this child. And when she had me, I was very unwell. And I didn't move at all on my mother's stomach for those 9 months. So if you know anything about spinal muscular atrophy, or you know anything about neuromuscular conditions, you'd know that if a child is born floppy, they usually die really quickly. So most children that are diagnosed with neuromuscular conditions, and I've got heaps of mates that have it, they are born relatively normal looking, and then all of a sudden later on at 3, 5, 8, or how old are you?
I'm 26, but I was about probably 16 when I started.
Yeah. So usually everyone's born nice, peachy, beautiful, healthy, and then eventually they show signs and symptoms. The ones that are born floppy are usually the ones that die really quickly in those first 2 years of life. So I was born floppy, didn't move, breached, all those traumatic things around birth. So my mother was told that I had spinal muscular atrophy and that I would die in the first 5 years of my life. So you can probably imagine, how many parents have I got? I got lots of parents in the room. All right, well, you guys would know this was really traumatic. I was the firstborn child, and mum's always said to me, mum and dad, they've always said to me the hardest part about this diagnosis for them was the fact that all the specialists told my parents to make me as comfortable as possible, put me into a home, because exercise actually makes this condition worse. That's what they were told 36 years ago. That's still relatively what people are told with certain diseases, but definitely back then that's what was told, blanket across the board, do not do any rehabilitation whatsoever. So I'm very fortunate that even though the specialist told my parents that I wouldn't crawl, walk, or live past my teenage years, hi, I'm here, and I still walk. I only use this $20,000 power assist wheelchair for longer distances, for really good parking. So I walk with a pretty obvious gait, but I use this like it's just too hard to get around and too slow for me now. And I started using this when I was about 15 or 16. But like I said, I'm not a parent. What am I talking about? I'm a bloody parent. I'm a parent to a little fluffy child. Oh, Tiffy. Called Tiffany. Tiffany's a very high maintenance pooch. A Buddhist once told me in one of my quests in some weird country to find myself, told me that if you are really close to an animal, your animal takes on all your ailments. So my poor dog has had both her knees reconstructed, has inflammatory bowel disease, pancreatitis, but she's fine. She's fine, But as you can see, Tiffany, I couldn't imagine having that diagnosis about my dog, let alone what my parents had to go through with me. But the reason why I believe, and the older I get, the more I believe it, and especially now that I'm surrounded by so much disability in my work and neuromuscular diseases. And I've got to say congratulations to you, Hannah. I've been around this game a long time, and I can tell you now we've got nothing like this in Queensland. So you are amazing for putting this together. So absolutely amazing. And I want to do it back in Queensland. I'm going to get you to come and talk.
Yeah.
But so I believe the only reason I'm here today is because my parents decided to not listen to the experts' opinions and dedicate their life to improving my life. And how do they do that? They started me what I lovingly call a crazy rehab program. And the reason I call it crazy is because everybody with a degree told my parents without a degree, they were 25 or 26-year-old parents from Rock Vegas, and they started me on this crazy rehab program with this contraption. They put me into a standing frame because up until the age of 3, I didn't move at all. So I didn't roll, I didn't crawl, I didn't reach for a rattle, I couldn't do anything. So all of a sudden, Mum stumbled across this standing frame at the local Rockhampton-based hospital, strapped me into it. So it was the first time that I was able to stand up at the age of 2.5, 3. Now, again, all you parents probably understand this. It's pretty hard to strap a 2.5-year-old into anything. You know, my poor dad tried everything to entertain me. Nothing worked. Now that I'm a social worker, it's also kind of illegal to strap a child into anything. It's one of our red flags. But to keep me in this contraption after trying everything to keep me in it, my dad, who's a typical country bloke, man of very few words, started to go into the backyard shed where all good men go to sort out their crap, and didn't tell us what he was doing, but he kept taking this with him, kept taking this standing frame with him. 6, 7, 8 days sort of went past, and he came back into the house really excitedly, or as excitedly as a Rockhampton bloke can get, with this. Put it onto wheels. So as you can see, I'm looking very, very happy. And on this contraption, my mother pushed me around the neighbourhood for up to 6 hours a day, every single day. She'd get up really early in the morning because obviously everyone looked at her really weirdly, and then she'd do it late at night again to get away from all the neighbours staring at her as if she was some crazy tennis mum with a torturous type contraption. But luckily for me, after 6 hours of exercise every single day, for about 6 months, I took my first step at the age of 3.5. Now, this to my parents was definitely their best day, their greatest day. And you'd think parents of a Paralympic medalist would bore you with stories about my Paralympic achievements. They won't. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard my mother talk really about my Paralympic medals or the times that I swam 50 metres freestyling. In fact, I'd bet this wheelchair on the fact that she wouldn't have a clue how fast I swam 50 metres freestyling to win, but she would bore you to tears with this story. But the day that I took my first step, and it was really simply for them the day they became like everybody else. And that's what we all want. Everybody just wants to be, it's really simple stuff. We all just want to feel like everybody else. And Mum and Dad were just like everybody else. They just wanted to be able to tick off some milestones. Because parents are really obsessed with milestones. I know this because of the job that I do now. My parents all of a sudden could tick off. They didn't tick off crawling. I didn't crawl. I just walked at 3.5. And then all of a sudden they were able to just feel like they had a bit of hope for their child. And really simply, again, I love simple stuff, is that they figured out exercise, it may work. So what else can we do with this kid? And again, everywhere they went with me, the specialists and physios kept saying to my parents, stop doing what you're doing, you're going to burn her out. Because, of course, 6 hours of exercise every day, and then they incorporated swimming, horse riding. I went along to Rockhampton, horse riding for disabled every Sunday for 16 years, and I rode horses purely for rehab reasons. I really did believe, this is no exaggeration, that I was actually a really good horse rider up until my 30th birthday when I was getting my photos together, you know, put on the wall at your 30th. So I was like, because I'm an athlete, or an old has-been athlete, because I was an athlete. Athletes' brains we are pretty simple creatures. We do anything for a long period of time, you just get good at it. So I did horse riding for 15, 16 years, so I just thought, well, I must have been good at it, obviously. So I asked Mum for some photos, and I thought I was going to get photos of me, on like bar lap, black caviar, jumping jumps as big as this table. Has anyone been to riding for the disabled in Melbourne? No one? Okay. So these are the horses that are at riding for disabled. They're pretty much disabled themselves. They don't move. They don't. If you kick them, well, we can't kick them. If you whip them, they don't move for obvious reasons. And here I am. Oh, look at my dad with his hot 80s white rugby league. You used to wear them, didn't you? You can be honest. No. So see-through too, aren't they? So the best thing about this photo, apart from the fact that my horse is actually asleep, is far out, that I'm sitting up on a horse all by myself. So again, anyone in the room with a muscle disease would understand this is good. I'd like to do this right now. In fact, I still can do this. What am I talking about? But back then, 3.5, that's amazing for a child with a muscle disease. So again, Mum and Dad, country town, this is actually a milestone in the beef capital of Australia, riding a horse. So again, tick, tick, next step, school. This is where I get excited in my role as an NDIS ambassador, because everyone whinges to me about disability, and I get that we've got a long way to go. I get that funding's crap. I get that we're over it. However, when I was a child, people like me didn't go along to mainstream schools. Integration just wasn't around in the 80s. So my mum had to fight for me to go along to an able-bodied mainstream school. She won because she's a very persistent lady. It's a really nice word for it. There may have been legal action taken, but I went along to school, didn't know about it, and of course, like most kids, tried to keep up. I was the only child with a disability in the school, and like I said, I do walk, and I definitely walked back then, and when I do walk, I walk with a pretty obvious limp. It does get better with vodka as my poison. That's what we're drinking later, not whiskey. It does get better with a bit of vodka, but of course you can't drink vodka in year one. So, again, social work kind of, yeah. So trying to keep up was really difficult, and then it came time to those dreaded sporting carnivals. I still have nightmares about the school sports carnivals. But back then I didn't care because I was in year one. I thought that I was actually good at sport, so I'd put up my hand and play everything. And when I did try and play softball, netball, basketball, and dislocate my legs trying to do it, I'd come home with lots and lots of V's. Oh, good try, Ribbons. Anyone else win any of these at school? No one. Oh, what? Nobody wants them, right? Nobody wants a good try, Ribbons. So my mum and dad figured out, damn it, our kid with the muscle disease likes sport. Tried violin, tried piano, tried debating. Nope. All I wanted to do was play GK on the netball team. That's it. So Mum and Dad tried and found this disabled sporting competition in Brisbane. I was so excited. I was 8 years of age. This is like a miracle as well back then, because I was 8, there was no Google, and those two words didn't go together in the 80s. Disabled sport. Like Paralympics, the first one was on television in this country, was 1996, and I know that because I was there competing. So the fact that my mum found a disabled sporting competition was like a miracle. So I was 8 years of age, went down to Brisbane, big plane, big city, big first real race, the 25 metres freestyle event. And now that I'm godmother 459 times, I know that if you tell an 8-year-old child they can do anything. Tell an 8-year-old kid they can climb Mount Everest, they believe you. Tell an 8-year-old child they can swim 25 metres freestyle, even though she can't lift her arms above her head, she believes you. I just thought my mother was being really supportive and cool by wearing her togs in the grandstand. So she knew that I couldn't make 25 metres freestyle. She thought I could make about 10 metres, but she signed her life away, crossed her fingers, crossed her legs, closed her eyes, hoped the lifeguard would jump in, rather than her. But luckily for me, the lifeguard and my mother, I made the very long 25 meters freestyle in 4 minutes and 56 seconds. Yep, that was good. And I came out with one of these, the magical blue ribbon. Sat my parents down after I won this blue ribbon in a very official type meeting at the age of 8 in the lounge room back in Rocky, in our sunken lounge room, of course, it was the 90s. Oh no, it was the 80s. Still in the 80s, damn it. And told my parents after I won this magical blue ribbon, well, Mum and Dad, it's obvious I'm good. Up some 25 meters freestyle in 4 minutes and 56 seconds. It's obvious what I should do with my life. I should be a swimmer. That's what I should do. I should be an Olympian. Because look at me. I've won this blue ribbon, and as you can see, I show all the signs and body type of becoming the next Olympic champion. Didn't say Paralympics, because like I said, never heard of it. No one had. So I told my parents this crazy, ridiculous dream. You know how crazy and ridiculous this dream is? If you look behind me, what colour is Todd Burmister's ribbon? Anyone see it?
Blue.
Blue! That's the big secret. Oops, that's right. There was only blue ribbons given out. No orange, definitely no orange. No green, and definitely no red. I didn't know that. I was 8. Who cares? I stuck that thing to my chest and I thought I'd won. And the most important thing about it was not only did I think that I won, I found something I was good at. Now, people often ask me for advice. My friends don't, but, people that pay me to come and speak to them ask me for advice. I tell everyone the same thing when it comes to being a human, being a parent, or being a friend, which is pretty much all the same thing, right? Just being a human. It's pretty much all you've got to do in your life, really, is to help another person find something they're good at. Because once you find something you're good at, all you've then got to do is find a head nodder. And I found my head nodders in my lounge room. I was a lucky one. Some people aren't as lucky as me. I meet them all the time. They spend their whole life trying to find a head nodder to agree with their crazy, ridiculous dreams. But my mother nodded her head, my father nodded his head, and then they cried behind closed doors. Didn't see them cry ever. They cried for a very long time, thinking, how are they ever going to explain to me, a kid with a muscle disease that's already 3 years over her life expectancy, that she can't do the most physical thing you can ever do in your life, which is, of course, be an elite athlete. Luckily for Mum and Dad, after them crying for long periods of time, they didn't have to tell me that I wasn't able to become an elite athlete, because I actually got faster than 4 minutes and 56 seconds and actually became good at the thing that I thought I was good at. And what happened to me at that time is I grabbed my own label. And having a neuromuscular disease or having a disability or having any disease, people are going to throw labels at you your whole life. You can't help it, especially when you're in a machine like mine cruising around the streets. People really like talking to people in wheelchairs. And I'm not talking about good conversations, like good, hearty, intellectual conversations, even about the weather. I wouldn't mind talking about the weather. I'd love to talk about the weather. Nobody ever wants to talk about the weather. All people want to talk to you about all day, every day is why I am in this wheelchair. And depends on the day, depends on what I tell them. But the problem is, whatever you tell them, they need to know more. If they don't find out more in that particular moment, they may die and combust. So all day I'm fielding questions and answers all day. And if you go and see anybody, any kind of physio, speechy, anyone, you've got to constantly tell them about your disease. They've never heard about your disease. And especially for these guys who obviously are a little bit more invisible than I am, that's even tougher, because then nobody has any idea what the hell you've got and you don't look disabled enough to need any help. So when I'm walking, I walk and wheel, right? So I walk and wheel half and half. So without the wheelchair, I get a different kind of attitude. Nobody lets me jump lines. Nobody gives me a seat. I've got to be like everybody else. Nobody believes that I'm disabled. So I'm constantly going, I'm disabled, as if you're disabled. I'm like, have you ever heard anyone lie about that before? Like, think about it, mate. So I know how that feels, and then I know how it feels to never stop talking about your disability when you're in a wheelchair. So what I did at the age of 8 is I grabbed myself my own label. Didn't know at the time because I was 8, and I made a choice. And I found a head nodder. So it was really, really powerful stuff for me happening, and it was like my armour. And I held on to that. I mean, everywhere I go, I'm now introduced as a Paralympic swimming whatever. So I'm still actually that label. That label that I grabbed at the age of 8 still works. And I feel like sometimes I can just bring up that label to field those questions, to shield them, to get rid of them, to get rid of the labels, to keep cruising through my day, trying to get to work, trying to get my coffee, trying to get my Pinot Noir, whatever I'm trying to do. And that's the strength of that kind of label for me, and that is just finding something you're good at. Before Ingrid did say something about not being able to be diagnosed, I've got to say, and I've never spoken about this publicly, it's probably the first time I've ever spoken about this publicly, so I may cry too, which would be a first. I've only ever cried when my mother's in the room.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend not bringing your mother.
I waited. No, I'm sorry.
So I, without question, the hardest part about having this disability, and I've always said the most disabling thing about having a disability is other people's attitudes, and I stand by that. Most of my friends that have had disabilities for long periods of time would say the same thing, that if they could just cruise through life and not have to deal with the attitudes that society place on us about, or assumptions that place on us about having a disability, then this wouldn't matter as much, which is absolutely true. The other side, the weird part about this disability for me is for the first 28 years of my life, I had spinal muscular atrophy. That's what everyone said I had. I've had every possible test you can imagine, literally in the world. I think I've probably been the most tested neuromuscular patient, I would suggest, ever. I've literally met with every international expert, and I don't want to ever tell you how much money I've spent on trying to get diagnosed. So the first 28 years of my life, that's what everybody said, and nobody ever wanted to say I didn't have it. Even though on every single test it came back that I didn't. I wasn't missing the SMN1 gene. My friends and family were getting frustrated with me in my early 30s, saying, just give it up. Like, move on with your life. Who cares what you've got? Well, I care what I've got for many, many reasons, mostly because I want to have children. And I also care for my mother, who carries a lot of guilt and wants to know, like, she had to deal with it more than anybody. She's definitely had a harder struggle with it than I have, even though you'd never know it to meet her. She's the most amazing woman I've ever met. So I'm now 36. I'm turning 37 in a few weeks. 3 months ago, I'm not here to tell you I got diagnosed genetically, because unfortunately that still hasn't happened, even though Nigel Lang has put my DNA through every possible test there is. I have been clinically diagnosed, which is a bit exciting, by an amazing geneticist, and I believe it. I actually believe it. First time I've ever believed it. I threw away every other stupid diagnosis to come my way. I've been diagnosed with everything else for the last 8 years, but nobody's ever put it on paper. One doctor in England's put it on paper, and one doctor here, that I've got a thing called amyoplasia, which is like a form of arthrogryposis. It's a big word, right? You're like, oh, just say SMA. I'm pretty much always just going to have to be able to say SMA, because trying to say amyoplasia, arthrogryposis is like difficult. However, I feel it's like the biggest weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I probably will never get genetically diagnosed by a blood test or a nerve test in my lifetime, I don't think, but I believe it, and that's all that matters, and my mother believes it, and my best friend believes it, who's been my best friend from kindy. So I'm now about to give up, retire from trying to get diagnosed, even though I just literally sent my DNA to another lab yesterday. I'll let them still play with what they want to play with, but the hardest part about having this disability has been being on this journey. And that's why this adult support group is so important, because nobody else can understand what this feels like. And I'm not talking about this disability. I couldn't, honestly, having no glutes and no hamstrings, not be able to lift my arms above my head, I'd give or take. I mean, who does the YMCA dance anymore anyway, right? And honestly, wheeling around life, as long as I can get to places, it is not that difficult. I've lived with it now for 36 years. There are days that I'm tired and fatigued and pissed off at the world and wish I could do things like run on the beach and surf. However, I can swim better than most people can swim. I haven't learned how to surf, wheelchair surfing. So there are things that I have learned how to do to compensate. The hardest part has been trying to get a diagnosis. That's why I connected with Henna, because I felt her pain through that email. Because you can't talk about it, because people get sick of you talking about it as well. If they don't know what to say. Nobody knows how to talk about this stuff. They just think that they have absolutely no concept of why you would just keep spending money on this one particular part of your life. So I'm pretty excited to say that I've got a diagnosis, even though it's the first time I've actually talked about it. I don't know how I'm going to incorporate it into my life publicly yet, because I don't know if I want to share this story yet. I still feel quite intimate with it. I've only told my close friends because I don't know if I want anyone's reactions yet. I don't really want them because it may ruin my euphoria around it, because people will still want to know genetically and see it on a piece of paper written that I've definitely got this disease, and signed, was being signed by a doctor. But look, I'm going to finish where's my bro? I'm going to finish my speech tonight just with a little story that's about my mother, because your mother's here and I can see how important she is to you. But after retiring from swimming at the age of 25, my mother constantly being told that she was a terrible mother, because I was 36 kilos all through my teenage years, and then I was 45 kilos all in my 20s, and now I just want to lose weight. What happened? Now I can't get rid of the weight. But most of my life when I trained, I was so sick and I was so underweight. So my mother was constantly told by specialists, we told you you're going to burn her out. You're doing the worst thing ever for her. Even though I was ridiculously fit and had a six-pack and I was winning medals, my mother just constantly kept on being my number one supporter during this quest of mine to be the only person with a neuromuscular disease to ever swim in the Paralympic Games. I went to 3 Paralympic Games and I retired at the age of 25. And when I retired from sport, I was asked to speak at a medical convention. So I was like 5,000 doctors in the room, and you can imagine all allied health professionals. And my mother really persistently wanted to come along to this speech. I didn't know why she wanted to come. She never asked me to come before, because she cries from the moment I get up on stage to the moment I get off stage. She no longer comes to my speeches. So it was really weird for me that she was asking to come along to this particular speech. And you don't say no to Terry Liddell. So I said, of course, Mum, can come along. So she came along. Her and my father stood in the back of the auditorium with 5,000 specialists. I'm up on stage talking away, doing my keynote speech. I'm looking around the room, and all of a sudden I could see this guy. He was like 3 or 4 rows back. And when I saw him, I realised why my mum so desperately wanted to come along to this speech, because in my crowd that day was the doctor that had diagnosed me. So he was the doctor that sent my parents along to Montrose Home when I was about 3 or 4, and he sent them there. We think he thought the best thing to do to stop Terry Liddell from Rockhampton calling every Tuesday, because she did. It was in her diary to call him and asking questions about my rehab and my future. He thought, I'm just going to show this woman what this disease looks like, and then she'll stop calling. So Montrose Home used to be a place for people with neuromuscular diseases to go to. So Mum and Dad went along to this place, and they saw, I guess, people like me now, which I think I look damn good. But of course, to a mother with a 3-year-old child, this is your worst nightmare. This is your worst nightmare. So they saw, children and teenagers in wheelchairs and ventilated and all that terrible stuff that sometimes happens. Not so much anymore to people with our disease, thankfully, but back then it was a pretty hard road. So Mum and Dad saw this really dark place, and it was a very dark day. And I saw this doctor in my crowd, and when I saw him, the largest penny in the world hit me in the head, and then I couldn't stop looking at him. The whole speech, I just stared at him, the whole speech. The 5,000 people didn't get a look in, it was just me and him. So you can imagine if I just looked at you the whole speech, it'd be really uncomfortable, right? Uncomfortable, yeah. So at the end of my half an hour speech of just staring him down, I thought I'm going to chase this guy down. So I really want to talk to him because, you know, he put my parents through the darkest day of their life, but he also made me realise that the greatest pleasure in life is achieving things people say can't be done. So I thought I'm going to chase him down. So I started to like get ready to, you know, wheel it down. And he was walking over to me. And I thought it was a bit weird. He was coming over to me, he was pale. He was sweating. And it was the worst half an hour of his life. And as he's coming over to me, my mother was racing down the auditorium, right? Like my poor father could not keep up with her. So she's coming, he's coming. I'm like, shit, I've got 2 minutes. So I'm going to deliver the best speech of my life to this guy. And as I'm about to say to him about my life and how amazing it's been, and I'm fine and healthy and walking and swimming, he just throws a folder at me. It's got my name on it. It's like really thick. It's like that thick. And I open it up and hundreds of press clippings and media clippings of me fall out onto the floor. And I'm speechless, right? For the first time in my life, I am speechless. And all I could muster up to say to him is, why on heaven's earth do you have all these press clippings of me? And he said to me, your mother has been sending me bloody press clippings for the past 15 years. Now, on this day, as my mother is just standing with her arms crossed going, like, who are you? Like, she all of a sudden became American. All he could say to me in all of this commotion of the press clippings flying everywhere and my dad looking at my mother going, you are crazy. I didn't know you did this. I didn't know she did this. No one knew she did this, only him and my mother. All he could say to me that day is, now whenever I diagnose a child with a rare neuromuscular disease I don't understand, and that's a miracle in itself that he actually said that out loud, that he doesn't understand all neuromuscular diseases. When I do come across children or teenagers that are like you, I now say these 3 words. Exercise may help. Those 3 words. He doesn't say will, because it doesn't work for everybody. I know that I'm lucky. I know that I won the lotto with muscle disease, and I know I won a lot of parents. I've seen it not work for other people, unfortunately. However, he doesn't say exercise will help. He says exercise may help. And those 3 words are more important to me than all of the medals that I won in my Paralympic career. Because not only did he diagnose the side of hope, and hope is the most magical ingredient you can ever add to another person's life, he also showed me through my mother's actions, she sat in her lounge room and kitchen for 15 years by herself. She didn't tell anybody. With a pair of scissors, a pen, an envelope and a stamp. And she put those press clippings in those envelopes and sent them off. She had no idea what she was doing. She had no idea that I'd live. She had no idea that I would represent Australia. She had no idea that I'd be this happy 36-year-old woman. She just did it. And she proved to me that day when I get overwhelmed with work or diagnosis or trying to find a good man or whatever it is that's happening in my life, when I get overwhelmed with life, I remember that lesson that I learned that day through my mum, and that is the smallest of acts can create the largest of circumstances and consequences. My mother showed me that day. So sometimes when you feel overwhelmed with whatever it is you're going through, even with this diagnosis, even if it's with this disease, just I hope that helps you, because it's always helped me to get back to the basics. You know, if I've got 5 minutes, like I had 5 minutes spare today, 10 minutes spare today to do a bit of yoga. That's all I had time for, and I felt better about it that I did it. When I'm getting overwhelmed with life, I just remember that my mother proved to me the smallest of acts can create the largest of impacts. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Finian?
Yep.
This has been
Great names. Rare names.
Thank you, everyone. I've written my speech. Okay, hello, my name is Finn Kelly. I've had a neuromuscular condition all my life called RSACS. Bit of an unfortunate name, I know, RSACS. It actually stands for Autosomal Recessive Spastic Ataxia of Charlevoix-Saguenay, which is an area in Quebec, due to the fact that it was first diagnosed and is mostly found in that part of the world. For a very long time, I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, as I showed many of the symptoms. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly when my diagnosis changed, but it didn't really matter anyway. I say that because for me, it was still the same struggle, just with a different name attached. My condition affects my coordination, making it quite difficult to balance, to walk, and to do physically challenging tasks. By the end of most days, I am physically exhausted because of the amount of effort I have to put in, just keeping myself upright and moving. Sometimes I feel like I am running fast to stand still. This is how it has been my whole life. But I was still determined to play sports growing up, to be one of the boys, not let my disability define me. I played cricket, basketball, and even wanted to play footy for a while. I didn't end up playing footy, which was probably for the best. I would have got absolutely clobbered. I know that now. I now feel like everything I have been through has made me the person I am today, and I am proud of this person. I used to find it very difficult to talk about my condition. I played off as a sore leg, bad ankle, whatever excuse I could think of at the time. I did this because I've never wanted people to pity me or treat me differently. The problem with that approach is, the more you try and pretend there is no issue, the more obvious it becomes that there is one. This is what I'm learning more and more each day. The best way to find happiness, to find acceptance, is to try and be comfortable in your own skin. To eliminate envy as much as possible. That's not to say that I don't still struggle. Some days I feel good, and other days are very difficult. I worry about my future, whether I will end up in a wheelchair in my 30s, whether I will be able to live a normal life. But I know this is an area of rapid medical advancement, with many passionate people working in this field to improve the lives of people like myself. Dr. Michael Fay and Adrian Sexton at the Royal Melbourne Hospital have been a really great help to me, and I am extremely grateful for that. Of course, I couldn't also have done it without my loving and supportive family. I can do this. I've written a poem as well. This is how I'm going to end it. The sun speaks to me of a new day. The moon hints at an infinite expanse. I have been here to live and to love. What a privilege to have such a chance. Thank you.
Emma, do you want to speak now? Oh, yes. Do you want to wait for your dad to get back? Yes, I'll just go move my chair. Yeah. Hi everyone. I thought that I'd begin by telling you a brief outline of my life so far and me pre and post diagnosis. Well, first of all, I was born in Sydney, and then I moved to California when I was 16. My dad got a job there and we lived there for 5 years as a family. And then we just followed Dad back to Victoria where he got another job. And that's when I was 21. And that's pretty much when I started noticing symptoms of my cerebral ataxia. I started, well, first of all, as you can imagine, through all this moving around, I'd lost my entire support system apart from my loving family. I'd lost friends along the way, not through choosing not to talk to me or me to them, but just because of physical distance. So getting a diagnosis without much of a support system has been pretty tough. So in January 2012, which was about 6 months after I moved here, I noticed that I would walk kind of funny. And by this I mean, if you were to walk behind me, you might have thought I was quite drunk because I'd walk in a sort of zigzag pattern unintentionally. Made fun of myself and so did everyone else. But then the friend suggested I should probably get my ears checked out to see if everything was okay, because that's where balance things all work. Anyway, so I went to the doctor and had several tests conducted and got the results back a few weeks later and found everything was fine and my ears were perfect, which got me thinking, if my ears aren't the thing affecting my dodgy balance and coordination, then what was? So I made an appointment with my GP, who gave me a referral to an immunologist. The immunologist was really good. For the first time ever, a doctor took a comprehensive kind of look at me and everything I'd done and how I just lived my life and things I'm able to do and not able. He and all of these questions seem completely unrelated to the core problem. Things mustn't have added up properly to him, so he gave me a referral to see a neurologist. Up until now, all this had taken me about 2 years, bringing us to my initial consultation with the neurologist in December 2013. He performed some seemingly ordinary tests on me, like my ability to run my heel down the center of my shin while lying down, or touching my nose with my finger to his finger while it moved. He then told us he wasn't particularly concerned, but it might be a good idea to get an MRI brain scan just to be safe. So I did, and a couple of weeks later, in January 2014, I learned that a significant portion of my cerebellum was missing, resulting in cerebral ataxia. Just so you know, cerebellum is quite a small but very important part of your brain, located towards the back of your skull where the spine kind of attaches. And basically is the entire coordination center for your whole body. And if your cerebellum becomes compromised, then a lot of things everything to do with coordination is compromised too. My cerebellum has been shrinking slowly and steadily for the majority of my life. In the words of my neurologist, I can no longer compare myself to other normal young adults. When I was first diagnosed, my parents, doctors and I didn't quite know what cerebellar ataxia was, what it would mean for me going forward. Since no one particularly high profile had it, not much research has gone into it and finding a cure. It's crazy to think I've been living with this in certain degrees of severity all my life. Now this was only the initial diagnosis, since we could see physically that my cerebellum had shrunk. But without genetic testing, it was impossible to have any more closure about the issue, such as when it started to shrink, or if it's hereditary or sporadic occurrence. So far, we only knew it to be cerebellar ataxia. Genetic testing took me a bit longer to do, not because it was a massive and difficult test. It was just a blood test and only took 3 months or so to get sent to Atlanta, analysed and come back. But it took me longer because I got majorly sick in Legionnaires in May of 2014, so 6 months after I got this initial diagnosis. Side note, I've been struggling with respiratory chest infections and a constant daily cough ever since I can remember. This is another and was the main reason I went to see the immunologist in the first place. It just turns out that there is more wrong with me than meets the eye. Anywho, Legionnaires is basically an extreme form of pneumonia, and in every reported outbreak of it since 1976, when it was named, it's had a fatality rate of at least 1%, but in most cases it's around 5%, and all in developed countries. Legionnaires completely wiped me out for about 5 months straight. I was bedridden pretty much for the entire time. And I couldn't get out of bed and practice my balance or coordination exercises at all. So as the saying goes, use it or lose it. I lost a lot of my abilities, such as running, jumping, spatial awareness, which is required to drive, and therefore I can't drive anymore. The ability to multitask, the ability to control reactions and reaction speeds, fine motor skills, so my ability to handwrite legibly was out. Basically, anything that required any kind of coordination in my body became a massive effort for me. But wait, there's more. I was ill for a minimum of 5 months, but after I had finished the course of antibiotics, ridding my body of Legionnaires, I found out the fatigue caused by Legionnaires stays in your body for 12 to 18 months. So not only was I dealing with the basic fatigue and lack of energy cerebellar ataxia can bring, I was also completely knocked out with the fatigue caused by the Legionnaires. It's a miracle I was even able to get out of bed, if at all, for 12 months. After all that and the 12-month period of fatigue was over, we come to May of 2015. Another side note, I had major jaw surgery in February 2015, just to add to my overwhelming fatigue, but I won't go into that now. In the last 7 months, I've been able to, for the first time since moving here, go outside independently of my parents. Since I'm unable to move out of home right now, at 25, I'm finally beginning my adult life. Only 7 years behind. Luckily, I actually do look a lot younger than I am, so I could still act and look like a young adult until mid to late 30s. Getting my diagnosis completely flipped my life upside down and inside out. I didn't realize I had a plan for the way my life might be looking right now until it got shattered. I'm still coming to terms with it and what it means for me going forward. I've slowly been realizing just how different I am from other 25-year-olds. My neurologist told me so when he saw me for the first time, but I didn't quite appreciate that impacts every little tiny aspect of my life, right? Things that you see, but every unseen bit inside my body too. Breathing, talking, swallowing, respiratory issues, everything. Growing up, I thought that everyone felt the same way as I did, that everyone has these struggles, and that I just had to keep on powering through because everyone else did to keep up with my peers. I'm now realizing that I have to think consciously about every little thing is not actually normal, and that it's okay for me to feel tired. Even now, I'm still a little unsure as to where that line of normality ends and I begin. SCAR 8, which is spinocerebellar ataxia type 8, is progressive, which should mean it's inevitable that things are going to go down from here, hopefully slowly. But as long as I have my family and supportive people around me like Hannah and Finn and whoever else has a neuromuscular condition, and not to mention my unshakable faith and my hope in the future, I believe I can go forward. Of course, I'd say on a weekly occurrence, everything gets too much and life seems hopeless and quite miserable. Those days suck. But the next day always comes, and usually even a little better. That's how I'm getting by at the moment, literally day by day, until something good happens. It means I really do have to appreciate the little things, however hesitant I am to do so. And the good things seem to come more frequently. Thank you.
Thank you. We're way over time. I sort of knew that would happen. I'm going to get emotional again if I talk because I'm Anne Pennington's daughter and she's the most emotional woman in the world. So I just wanted to thank everyone so much for coming, and it means so much to me. So thank you. Everyone go have some dinner. Thank you. Yeah.
Before I forget.
Oh, gosh. I'm just going to take it one day at a time, Mum.
That's right. That's really good. Yeah, really good. I really want to do this in Queensland.
I'd love to help, although I'm obviously a bit of an emotional mess.
Yeah. Definitely going to do it in Queensland. It's good to be emotional.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel people get so awkward and don't respond well.
No, I think it's good. Well, it means you're human.
Yeah.
And not a narcissist.
It's true.
It's always good. I'm a hardened, I've been doing this too long. I thought I would get emotional today because of, can I get that out?
What you've said, yeah.
Because about my diagnosis. Thanks for picking me up. To get me here. Thanks for picking me up. Am I going to be able to get over the Yeah, just use it. I'm going to be okay with this. Oh, I took it. Give me a call otherwise.
No, it's okay. There's nothing scary.
Should have said if anyone wanted to ask any questions.
Yeah, I think it's like pretty intimate. So they can ask me. You guys are amazing parents.
Well, yeah, of course. We are the amazing
It's funny how we all got right.
I just have to figure out how to end this. No, that's okay, sweetie. I'll do it all. Yeah, it's super easy. I think we might go somewhere for a drink.
Well, I'm going to head off where I'm moving out of my house at the moment. It's absolutely like a nightmare.
Where are you at the moment?
On Nicholson Street. House, no? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we're all moving out of that house.
All of you?
Yeah, so there's 8 of us living there. Yeah, I know. So, yeah, we've got, yeah, so JP and I are moving in with his mum for like 2 months, and then we're moving into our own place in Coburg. Yeah,
Amazing!
It's really exciting.
You bought a house?
I didn't put money to it.
Okay.
After traveling Europe, I have absolutely no money, but yeah, him and his mum bought a place together. Yeah, kind of like the yeah. Except minus the marriage. Oh my god, yeah, that freaks me out. But but so we're moving in April. So yeah, we're all moving out of our house. Moving out to save a bit of money for furniture. And then I'm still there. Really good. I'm looking for a new job. Well, I have been for like the last since I got back from Europe. So moving house at the moment is an absolute nightmare. I feel like to do it all in between, like getting home from work and coming through to inspect our house on Saturday. So
So it's like a mutual decision of everyone to say like, let's all get in.
Yeah, well, it's just really nice. Like we were moving out, and then
Is it couples? Is it kind of
So there's me and JP, Zara, Frank, Haley, and Liam Jenkins, and Vanessa. So there's 5 bedrooms, but so once we said we were moving in, Haley was like, I can't afford a rent either, and then Liam kind of just snowballed.
No,
we were hoping to just like and leave. But it's such a big house to clean as well.
And when do you have to be out?
Not till the 14th, but we've got inspections. We've got one Sunday, one next Wednesday, and then we'll be like when our on the weekend.
Like rental inspection?
Yeah, rental. Rent our place. On Australia Day, I was like on my hands and knees picking up the cigarettes, all the cigarette butts from the garden. I don't even like smoke on my bed for the rest of the house. I don't know why I chose that job. I'll take care of the cigarettes. Yeah, and that was a nightmare. But just doing it like bit by bit. But sort of
That would be.
Where are you gonna head?
I don't know. We'll probably go to maybe to Brunswick. Carney's here, but she's staying in Carlton, but she's just off Royal Parade, so we might just like go to the Everett Castle for dinner. It's still like it's getting a bit late now. I just have to put everything in the kitchen and then I'll do it tomorrow morning.
See, beautiful thing. You are gorgeous. Thank you so much for coming.
It means so much to me. Thank you.
You are a long way to go with this sort of presentation and support group. It's your career, isn't it?
I love doing it.
You can tell you just shine through it. Awesome.
Thanks, Dick.
Love you too.
Thank you very much. I'll see you. Sounds good. No, you're very welcome. Yeah. Oh, it's been like it's exactly the same for me. Actually, he was the first person that I met that I was able to relate to. Yeah, it's been incredible. Yeah, I couldn't even I wasn't even able to talk about it. It was terrible, and I feel it was for him and yeah.
So just take it what do you hope to do?
I'm not too sure. I think I just want to. I mean, it's still so small and it's still intimate, and I sort of like that. But I have a full-time job, so this is just something that I do. Yeah, so I do work here. Yeah. So I'd love to do more of it. I just don't. Yeah, I sort of just. I guess I just want to do the thing that they need me. No, she didn't. But she's just I got diagnosed at Cabrini Hospital. Yeah, so I was diagnosed there by a neurologist named Timothy Day. And he's still around, but she was sick. Yeah. It was really good. It broke it up again. Yeah. Oh yeah, I told him to come over for dinner. Very soon. So am I. So it's really good. Every time we get together, it's really good. Oh, you're very welcome. It's nice to meet you again. Sounds good. Thank you. Oh my God, I'm going to emotional again. I didn't think I was going to get emotional. Yeah. It's easy for me to talk about, but I think when I'm in front of a lot of people, I just get a bit overwhelmed, perhaps. So, yeah.
It looks like the meeting recorded, so that's just sit there.
Okay.
So if you just save that into a USB or whatever, and send it to.
I wonder if I can email it.
Yeah, sure.
This is my work laptop, but I don't know if I can. Yeah.
If you want, I have my USB here.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I don't have my work one on me.
So did you show Simon before then?
It's such an incredible job though, getting this all together.
I know, I'm so happy.
I think it turned out really well.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yes. Just to make it more regular.
Yeah, definitely.
You said it last time 2 years ago.
A year ago, yeah, well, over a year ago now. So, yeah, it would be good to, better. Yeah, and find more people that we can, talk to. And, yeah, I know. Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. As long as I could sit through my crying, I wouldn't mind. Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Looks like it's recognizing my USB.
Do you have issues with your team? How do you feel after you come out?
It's not important. Is that the projector?
Oh no, that's connected to the projector, yeah. So what do you need? A USB port? Oh, you're
just trying a different one. Stop scanning. What are you scanning? It's scanning mine.
Oh, yeah. It's just like checking it for
It has no threat.
Yeah.
It's not a threat. I could have told you that. I know for sure. Yeah, it'd be good to get that list of people that you have and send them out an email or something. So you can send out your details and stuff.
Thank you.
Give them the last meeting and the next one.
I know. Yeah, that's going to be more people. I just want to get get us all together.
Yeah.
Hopefully a campfire. I don't know how lucky I'll be able to get.
Yes. Sarah, whereabouts do you live? She pays. Next time you come over, like, I really quick. Yeah, so you have to come over every 4 months to see him. Yeah.